So, without further delay, I would like to have you meet our good friend and primetime member, Will Damron.
Thanks, guys. My name is Will Damron, and I've written a book entitled Cop Out. And thanks to the Primetimers group here in Las Vegas, Pete, Art, Jim, David, several of the other guys, I've got the opportunity to be here this morning to talk to you. And I'm glad to be here and to tell you a little bit about my story. You know, as you're at a meeting like this and with a bunch of other guys that are about our age, we've all got a story. And we've all got a lot of great stories. And my story is a little bit unusual, as is probably all of ours to an extent. If you came out in the 60s, that was a wild time in the history of our country. The Vietnam War was going on. 40,000 young men a month were being drafted into the military. You were hearing things like flower power and hippies and acid rock music, and there was just a lot of stuff going on. My story is a little bit more unusual because of where I was. I was in Oakland, California. And during the 60s, I can tell you, Oakland was on the evening news almost every night of the week. We were right next to Berkeley, where the riots were occurring over the Vietnam War. It was a rough town then. Oakland is still a rough town today. And it was, and for myself, what made it interesting is I was right on the front line. I was a cop in Oakland, California. Basically, though, my story started in May of 1965. It was completing my junior year at Arizona State University. It had about a week to go of school. I was an art, English, education major. I was planning on becoming a school teacher. And as I was walking to one of my last English classes, I stopped and I picked up a copy of the student newspaper. And I'm thumbing through the paper because the professor was late. And so I'm sitting there reading it, and on the very last page of that paper, up in the right-hand corner, there was a little 1-inch square ad with a thick, black, ominous-looking frame around it, which I'd never seen before. And I looked at that ad, and it said, Oakland Police Department Recruiting. And it had a telephone number, and it said, starting salary, $646 a month. Now, that may not sound like a lot today, but if I stayed in school for one more year and got my teacher's credentials and started teaching somewhere in Phoenix, I could expect to sign a contract for maybe $400, $425 a month. If I could get my butt to California, which is what a lot of kids in Arizona dreamed of doing, I might be able to sign a contract somewhere for $450 to $475. So when I saw that ad for $646 a month, that looked pretty good to me. So I ripped it out of the paper, I took it off, and I showed it to my mom that night, and I said, hey Mom, look at this, what do you think? And Mom looked at it and she said, well, you know, your great-grandfather was the chief of police in Roanoke, Virginia. I said, gosh, Mom, I said, I didn't know that. And she said, with a father in the military, you're used to a uniformed environment and being around weapons and guns and pistols and stuff. She said, it might not be too far a stretch if you think it's something you might be interested in. Well, I was interested in that $646 is what I was interested in. So the next day, I called that telephone number. I talked to a woman in personnel who gave me a few pre-qualifying questions, which I answered. And I told her, I said, listen, I'm only 20 years old, but I will be 21 in another month. And she said, that's close enough. She said, I'll send you the application. So the next day, I got the application in the mail. Mom and I went over it that night, and Mom typed the whole application out for me so it would really look nice and neat. So the next morning, Mom's getting ready to go to work, and part of that application, you had to have 5 letters of recommendation, personal letters of recommendation, from 5 people who had known you for at least 5 years. So Mom's heading out the door, and I said, hey, Mom, who are we going to get to write these 5 letters? And my mom said, don't worry, I'll take care of that. My mom worked in the Ellis Building in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. The Ellis Building was about a block and a half from the state capitol. The Ellis Building contained the offices of every state and federal elected or appointed official in the state of Arizona. My mom knew everybody in that building. And everybody in that building knew my mom. She was a force to be reckoned with. So that day, 5 letters of recommendation were typed out and mailed from that office building. First letter of recommendation came from the head of the Arizona Highway Patrol, top law enforcement office in the state of Arizona. Good recommendation. Second letter of recommendation came from the head of the Arizona National Guard, military. Good recommendation. Third letter of recommendation came from a man named Mr. Gwynn, who is the head of the Veterans Administration in Phoenix, Arizona. Fourth letter of recommendation came from Senator Carl Hayden, who at that time was the oldest ranking senator in the United States. Good recommendation. He could have recommended me to West Point if he wanted to. But anyways, and the last recommendation came from the little old lady who lived behind us across the alley. My mom wrote all those letters. I know she did. And I know she took them into the offices of those various gentlemen, and she said, here, sign this for me. And they signed, thank you, Alpha, glad to do that. And then Mom made sure they got in the mail. They all went in the mail that next day. Not bad. So it was a couple of days after that, and I get a call from a gentleman in Oakland, California. His name is Lieutenant Lewis. By the way, I will mention, all those letters were on the very official-looking stationery, in the official-looking envelopes, and they were signed by the people they were supposedly written by. So the couple of next days, I get this call from a Lieutenant Lewis in Oakland, California. And he said, Will, he said, I've got your application in front of me here. You're interested in being a policeman in Oakland, California? I said, yes, sir, I am. And he said, I'd like to get together with you and meet you, talk to you a little bit about being a policeman in Oakland, California. And I'm going to be in Phoenix next Sunday, this coming Sunday. He said, do you think it'd be possible on Sunday for me to meet you? And I said, yes, sir, absolutely. He said, good. I'm going to be staying at the YMCA. I'd like to know if I could meet you at 6 o'clock at the YMCA in Phoenix, Arizona. And I said, yes, sir. He said, Will, do you know where it is? And I said, yes, sir, it's on 1st Street in Phoenix, Arizona, downtown. I know exactly where it is. He said, good. He said, I want to meet you there at 6 o'clock on Sunday morning. So that next Sunday morning, I'm there. It's bright, it's sunny, the building faces toward the east. It's already 90 degrees. It's the month of June. It's going to be 100 degrees that day. I'm there in front of the YMCA, and so are over 200 other men that morning, all waiting to meet Lieutenant Lewis. And I'm thinking to myself, holy hell, how am I going to impress this guy or get a one-on-one with this guy in any way to stand out from this crowd of 200 men who are there? How the heck is this going to happen? I'm also a little disturbed because a lot of those guys who are standing there are in suits, nicely dressed in suits with dress shirts, ties, and stuff like that. And Lieutenant Lewis had told me, he said, listen, Will, by the way, when you show up, he said, dress casually. I may ask you to do a couple of physical dexterity tests. I didn't own a suit. So I'm there in cut-off Levi's, a white t-shirt, and white tennis shoes. And I feel a little bit grubby, but I know I don't have time to get home and change clothes. So I'm standing there with those 200 other men, and sure as hell, at about 6 o'clock in the morning, Lieutenant Lewis comes out with 2 other gentlemen. One of the guys he's with is a big, rough, nasty, mean-looking cop. I mean, this guy looked mean. The other guy was kind of a diminutive gentleman. He was dressed in a suit. His name was Mr. Vaughn. And Mr. Vaughn was the head of the personnel department in Oakland, California. Well, without much fanfare to do, introductions or anything else, they split those 200 men into 3 different groups, and each of those groups went with one of those 3 guys for a day of testing. Lucky, lucky me, I get to go with Big Nasty Mean Cop. So what happened is we would have a written test of some sort, then there'd be a physical test, and then there'd be another written test and a physical test. This is going to go on all day long. Whenever we took one of the written exams, you'd take it up to Big Nasty Mean Cop, and he'd sit there and he'd score it right in front of you. And if you didn't get the score that he was looking for, or the qualifying score, or whatever it was, he seemed to delight and say, get the hell out of here, buddy, you didn't make a job. Go on! And I'm going, okay. So he's thinning out the crowd. Now, several of the physical tests I really got a kick out of. One of the first ones was, we're lined up in alphabetical order. He's got our names on a clipboard. And we go into the gym, and there was the bar there, and he wanted us to jump up, and he told us we had to do 5 chin-ups. Now, a chin-up is different than just a pull-up. A pull-up, you just kind of go up and you touch the bar with your head, or, you know, yeah. But with a chin-up, you got to get your chin up over the top of that bar. And he told us, he said, you have to do a minimum of 5. He said, if you can do more than that, do as many as you can, because it will raise the overall percentage on your score for the day. Okay, so I'm standing there in line, and I'm watching these guys go up and start to do their chin-ups. Believe it or not, there were guys who went up there, grabbed the bar. These guys wanted to be cops, and they could not do a chin-up. Needless to say, they're going home. There were guys I watched that got 3, and they really struggled and got 2 more. And I remember this one guy, he whipped out 5 pretty good. Actually, and then he did 6. He did an extra one. I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's cool, that's good. Okay, so I step up to the bar. I knew I could do a lot of chin-ups. I challenged a guy one day at my gym to see who could do more chin-ups. I had done over 100 chin-ups. I felt the next day like my arms had been pulled out of their sockets by a gorilla, but I knew I can do a lot of chin-ups. So I step up to the bar and I look up at Big Nasty Mean Cop and I said, "Sir, do you want me to do those overhand or underhand?" He looks down at me and he said, "I don't give a fuck how you do them. Grab the fucking bar and do them." And I said, "Yes, sir." So I jump up, I grab that bar, and I'm going up and down and 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 up. And he hits me on the ass with his clipboard. He says, "Get the fuck down." And I fall down to the floor and I look up at him and I said, "I can do more, sir." And he looks at me and he says, "Yeah, I'll bet you can." So I'm starting to stand out from the crowd. Another one of the physicals, I really got a kick out of this one, is in the gym, they had a rope hanging from the ceiling, and 15 feet up that rope, there was a knot that they had tied in the rope. You had to sit down on the floor, on your butt, with your feet out in front of you, hold onto that rope, and when Big Nasty Mean Cop said, "Go!" you had to pull yourself that rope, touch that knot, and get back down to the floor in under 15 seconds. It did not help. The Big Nasty Mean Cop is standing there with a stopwatch. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Get the fuck out of here, go home. There were guys, once again, who sat there, and when he said go, they literally couldn't lift their butt off the floor. So they're going out of there. I sat down on the floor, held on to the rope. He said go. I shot up that rope, touched that knot, and fell back down to the floor in under 10 seconds. I was making an impression on this guy. Here's the last one. This one's funny. We stood up next to this wall. You had to stand next to this wall, and you had to reach as high as you could on the wall. And Big Nasty Mean Cop had a big piece of chalk, and he goes, and he marks that wall where he could reach. So I'm smart. I've been watching all this. And I go up next to the wall, but I don't stand right next to the wall. I'm a little ways away from the wall. And I kind of go, Big Nasty Mean Cop is standing there looking at me. All of a sudden, quick as lightning, he grabs my wrist, throws me up against that wall, lifts me about 3 inches off the floor, makes the mark, and looks at me with a smile on his face and says, "Now fucking jump." I had no trouble doing it. I jumped at least a foot or 2 feet above the mark. So that was it. But this goes on all day long, this testing. This went on till 10 o'clock that night. From 6 in the morning till 10 o'clock that night. And by 10 o'clock that night, out of those over 200 men that showed up that morning in Phoenix, there were 10 of us left. Not one of those 10 guys was wearing a suit, tie, and shirt. We were a pretty grubby looking group of guys. So Lieutenant Lewis comes out and he says, "Listen guys," he said, "we want to get this whole thing wrapped up today." He said, "So we're going to hold the oral interviews right here and now." He said, "So wait out here in the hallway. We'll call you in one at a time." He said, "And come in for the interview. The rest of you guys wait here." So they call in the first guy. First guy goes into the room. The rest of us are standing out there in the hallway waiting. And he's not in there but about 6, 7 minutes. Comes out, slams the door, says, "Fuck those assholes. What a bunch of bastards. All they tried to do is piss me off. I don't need their shit, man. I'm out of here." And I'm thinking to myself, good God, what the hell is going on in there? Second guy goes in. He comes out in about the same length of time, and he's kind of, he's crying. A grown man, and he's crying. And we're all, "Buddy, what happened? Hey, calm down. You're okay. What happened? What happened? You okay?" And stuff like that. He said, he said they started asking me questions, and he said, "I tried, but then the big cock guy, he started saying, queer, you're queer, hey little faggot boy." I'm not queer, I'm not. But he wouldn't stop saying that. I don't think I did very good. And he leaves. So now I'm really worried about what the hell's going on in there. I had been very, very lucky. All day long I had been paired off with a guy named Ron Danielson. That's actually his name. Just because of the spelling of our last name. My last name is Damron, D-A-M. His last name is Danielson, D-A-N. Ron and I had been together all day. Ron was a very savvy dude. He was ex-military. He'd been in the Navy. Ron was taking police science courses. Ron really wanted to be a cop somewhere, and was determined to be a cop, and he looked the part. So anyways, I'd been paired off with Ron all day. So Ron comes up to me and he says, listen, Will, he said, all they want to do in there is fish off. They want to get you excited, see if you can lose your temper. He said, so whatever you do, whatever they throw at you, whatever they ask you, just stay calm, stay focused, make direct eye contact, but don't lose your temper in front of those guys or say something you shouldn't. And he said, and by the way, he said, don't lie to them. He said, if they catch you in a lie, they're going to nail your ass to the wall. I said, okay, Ron, thanks. I said, I think I can do that. So my name is called, and I go in. So I close the door, I pull out the chair, I'm sitting down in front of the desk, and here's Lieutenant Lewis, here's Mr. Vaughn in the middle, and here's Big Nasty Mean Cop over here on the right-hand side. The fact that my great-grandfather had been the chief of police in Rotary, Virginia, didn't mean a damn thing. It was on the application there in front of them, didn't mean a thing. The fact that they had the 5 most incredible recommendations that they had ever seen on a candidate to be a cop didn't mean a damn thing. And something else that I found out later when I again met Lieutenant Lewis in Oakland, California, the fact that I had the highest scores, written and physical, from any candidate they had ever seen, for anybody they had ever tested in the United States, the fact that I had those highest scores also didn't mean a damn thing. I was pretty sure by that time that Big Nasty Mean Cop was out for bear. And I think that my little fuzzy buck was the bear that he was focusing on. So I was a little bit nervous. So I'm sitting there, right away Lieutenant Lewis asked me a question. And I said, well, sir, and I start to answer the question. I'm barely getting the words out of my mouth, and all of a sudden, Big Nasty Mean Cop interrupts. So I switch from Lieutenant Lewis to Big Nasty Mean Cop, and I start to answer his question, and all of a sudden Lieutenant Lewis shoots back at me and says, excuse me a second. He said, if I ask you a question, I want a full, complete answer to my question. Do you understand me? I want full answers to anything that I ask you. Yes, sir, absolutely. And you know, I want to answer your question. All of a sudden, Big Nasty Mean Cop interrupts again. He said, you know something? He said, you haven't answered a question in here straight this morning. He said, what the hell are you trying to hide? We know you're trying to hide something, you know, and we're going to figure out what the fuck it is before you get out of this room. And I, well, no, sir. I said, I'm not hiding anything, and I want to answer your question and do the best I can. Lieutenant Lewis comes back at me. Excuse me a second. Do you think this is funny? He said, do you think we're in here just blowing shit to have a good time? He said, it's 10 o'clock at night. He said, we're tired. He said, if you're not serious about this, we're serious about it. If you're not serious, get your fucking ass out of here right now. I said, no, sir, I am serious. I do want to answer your questions and stuff like that. So this goes on and on and on, and they're chewing on my ass. The only person who asked me a question that really seemed to mean anything was Mr. Vaughn. And he had my application there in front of me, and generally he would ask me something about some point on the application, and I could get my answers out to him. But Lieutenant Lewis and Big Nasty Mean Cop are just chewing me up. So anyways, eventually Lieutenant Lewis, he comes out with this one. This is a good one. He said, have you ever gotten in trouble with the law or done something where you should have gotten in trouble with the law? Well, that covers a lot of territory, doesn't it? Yeah. So I'm looking at him and I said, well, yes, sir. I said, I did get a ticket one time from the Arizona Highway Patrol. Big Nasty Mean Cop immediately. Oh, really, hotshot? And what was the fucking ticket for? And I said, well, sir, I said, I was speeding. I crossed a double yellow line, passing another car illegally. I was written up for reckless driving, and I had a falsified driver's license, and so he wrote me up for that, too. That stopped him for about a second. And then the room exploded. Holy shit, did he lock your fucking ass up? And I said, well, no, sir, he didn't. He gave me the ticket, and he told me I would have to appear in court in front of a judge. I'll bet you did. So what happened when you went to court, hotshot? You lost your license, didn't you? And I said, well, no, sir. I said I didn't. I said, I actually, I never went to court. Excuse me, you never went to court? What happened? You had to go to court. See, I said, well, I said when I showed the ticket to my mom, and Mom took me downtown and to the head of the Arizona Highway Patrol, and I sat in his office and I talked with him for a little while, and then he called up the precinct that had given me the ticket, and he told them to tear the ticket up and to give me my license back. Oh my God, that blew the roof off that room. Are you fucking kidding me? You weren't held responsible for something you did where you could have caused an accident. You probably would have killed somebody, and you weren't held responsible because you knew someone or your mommy knew somebody, and you weren't held responsible for what you did. And I said, sir, I said, I didn't ask him to tear up the ticket. I said, he interviewed me and talked to me, and that was his decision. I said, but I admitted what I did. I'm admitting what I did right now to you guys. I said, I didn't ask him to do that. Oh my God, they went something, I think that totally exhausted them. They've been overreacting the whole time, but I think that one just blew their little circuit. So anyways, we're sitting there, and finally Lieutenant, he slumps back in his chair, and he looks at me and he says, Mr. Damron, he said, have you ever had a homosexual experience? I'm sitting there looking at these three men, and two things flashed through my head at the speed of light. The first one was about me and a friend of mine named Hugo. Hugo and I had known each other ever since we were sophomores in high school. And a gym had opened up not far from where we lived called the Gym and Swim. It was the first weightlifting, bodybuilding gym that ever opened in Phoenix. And Hugo and I had joined that gym together. And so for the next 3 or 4 years, Hugo and I worked out together all the time at the gym. And we were pumping our biceps and seeing who got the biggest chest and who could do the most bench presses. We were really into it, really having a good time. And usually on a Friday or a Saturday or Sunday, if Hugo and I had worked out together, when we would leave the gym, we'd go to his house or my house, and Hugo and I would shower together. And then Hugo and I would go into a bedroom, and Hugo and I like to wrestle, naked. Excuse me, that's not gay. I mean, the Greeks and the Romans. So I'm sitting there, but I'm looking at these three guys, and I'm thinking to myself, nah, I'm not going to tell them about Hugo. Here's the other one that flashed through my head. And this is so ironic, it's absolutely unbelievable. 3 floors below the room where I am sitting right there looking at these three guys is the YMCA swimming pool. When I was a young kid, my mom enrolled me in the summer in a program called Sky Y Camp. And every morning during work, Mom would drop me off, and then she'd pick me up in the evening. So all day long, they had activities going for us. There was shuffleboard and badminton and ping pong and basketball, and we'd make little things out of leather, keychains, crap like that, paint little ceramic stuff. At lunch, we had our little box lunch. We'd sit on the floor in the gym, where I had just been. We'd sit on the floor of the gym, we'd watch a serial movie about Tarzan or something, eat our little box lunch. But every afternoon, for about an hour and a half, we got to go down to that gym and swim naked. I loved it. To me, it was the highlight of the day. Well, there was this one lifeguard there, and as I recall, he was kind of a handsome guy. He had a nice hairy chest, and he was naked too, except for his whistle. And he liked to get into the pool with us. And he knew 5 or 6 of us by name, and he'd stand out from the edge of the pool, and when he would point at you and call your name, you went underwater, pushed off of the wall, and swam out to him, and swam between his legs. I loved it. So I'm up against the wall. He went, Will, go! I go underwater, push off. I'm swimming out toward him, looking at him underwater. I get to him. I grope him and tug on his dick a couple of times. And I swim between his legs. And I feel one of those hairy thighs brushing against the side of his head. And I come up behind him, up against his ass. He turns around, he holds me up next to that chest. Will, you did good. That was good. Catch your breath. You all right? You okay? I'm up against that beautiful hairy chest. Yeah. I'm ready. He said, you ready to go back? You ready to go back? Yeah, I can do it. So he lets me go. I go down the chest. Yeah, I tug on it a couple more times. Feel my way between his legs. Hairy thigh against my face. And I swim back to the wall. I thought it was great. And I'm sitting in this room in front of these three guys, and that pool is 3 floors below the room where I'm talking to these guys. And I'm thinking, but here again, I think to myself, I'm not going to mention Sky Y Camp. I'm not going to tell about that. But I do blurt out this. You ready? I said, well, I did have something sort of happen once. Big nasty mean cop immediately. Oh, really, hot shot? And what was this thing that sort of happened once? And I said, well, I was at the gym working out, and I came out of the shower, and there was this guy in a changing booth in front of me, and he was kind of like doing something to attract my attention and stuff, and he was like doing something to try and make me look. Lieutenant Lewis, that's it? What happened? What'd you do? And I said, well, I said, really, I said, he kind of scared me. I said, there wasn't anybody else in the locker room, and I said, so I got nervous, and so I ran. I put on all my clothes, and I grabbed my gym bag and stuff, and I ran out. I just left. Big nasty mean cop immediately. That's it? You just ran out? You left? And I said, well, yeah. I said, he scared me. I was afraid he might hurt me or do something to me. So I said, yeah. I said, I just ran out. Lieutenant Lewis leans forward. Are you ready? He says, Damron, he said, I'm going to tell you something right here and now. In Oakland, California, there are some big muscular queers, bigger than you are, who could throw you up against that wall, beat the shit out of you, and you may have to face one of them one day. Could you do that? I looked at Lieutenant Lewis and I said, sir, I would never run from a fight if others were depending on me. He looks at me for a minute and he says, Damron, he said, get the fuck out of here. And in about 10 minutes, send in a man named, what was my friend's name? Oh yeah, Ron Danielson. He said, send Ron Danielson in about 10 minutes. Thanks, guys. So I go out, and Ron's waiting for me. And he says, God, he said, you were in there about 20 minutes. He said, that's probably pretty good. How'd you do? I said, Ron, I said, I have no idea. I said, I did stay calm. I tried to answer their questions, although I couldn't always. But it scared the crap out of me. If he would have told me about the Hells Angels, I think I might have done it. I, growing up in Phoenix, had never heard of the Hells Angels. If he wanted to scare the crap out of me, why didn't he tell me about the Black Panthers? The Black Panthers were founded in Oakland, California by Huey Newton, Eldridge P. Cleaver. Their offices were there. They had a big office up on Telegraph Avenue. There was a picture in the front window of Huey Newton sitting there with a rifle held erect in each one of his hands. They advocated armed resistance and violence against the Oakland pig cops. If he wanted to scare the crap out of me, he should have told me about the Black Panthers. But no, there's no mention of the Black Panthers or the Hells Angels. All he tells me about is the big muscular queer that could beat the shit out of me. When I walk out of that interview, in my own fuzzy little brain, I'm thinking, geez, you know, if I get a job in Oakland, California, I may get to wrestle naked with some big muscular hairy men. Do I want that job? Hell yes, I want that job. And I was more determined than ever that I was going to do everything I could to get it. A few days later, I get a call to go for a physical interview. For a physical test with a doctor. So I get the physical, no problem. I get the name of a psychiatrist, and I'm supposed to go for a complete psychiatric evaluation. That was fun. I actually wrote a chapter about that in my book, but we cut it out in the final edition. But if I write another one, a sequel or something, it'll be in there. That was a real good experience. So anyway, so I'm waiting around, and sure as hell, a few days later, we're now in the month of June. We've gone from May to June, and I get another call from Lieutenant Lewis, and he says, Will, this is Lieutenant Lewis in Oakland, California. And I said, yes, sir. And he's bright, cheery, fun, sounds nice on the phone. And he says, listen, he said, do you still want to be a cop in Oakland, California? And I said, yes, sir. I said, I do. And he says, I want to offer you that position. He said, how do you feel? I said, oh, sir, I said, that's exciting. I said, that's really great. He said, Will, what day do you turn 21? I said, I turn 21 next Wednesday, sir. And he said, Will, I want you in my office at 8 o'clock next Wednesday morning. I said, yes, sir, I'll be there. When my mom got home, needless to say, I was excited to share the information. And the first thing we did is get a map of California and try to figure out where the fuck Oakland was. I had no idea. So we're looking at the map, and Mom goes, oh, look, it's right across from San Francisco. Mom had been to San Francisco, and she said, that's a beautiful city. She said, it's culture, there's art, there's museums, beautiful restaurants. She said, that's a great city. She said, and look, Oakland's right across that bridge. Oakland must be beautiful too. Famous last words.